Hey, what's up? Dusk here, and I want to give my first impressions on Killer Klowns from Outer Space. Played the first day of the week early access that you get for pre-ordering the game. Now, I've got a lot of things that I want to say about the game, but some of those things will change depending on what is included in the game on the day that it launches, the official launch, because I know that there are some things missing from the game that will be in at launch. And basically, to sum it all up in a nutshell, the game is incredibly fun. It's got some jank and some bugs that need to be ironed out. But for the most part, it's pretty fun, and I got to do some skillful play, got to see what that looks like. So there's a lot to do and learn, and a lot of interesting back and forth and good balance. That said, I don't think the game lasts very long in its, like, if its current state overall, or not current state, but current set of features. There we go. uh, are what we can expect, then it's just not possible for this game to run on. It's making the exact same mistake that every other asymmetrical PvP game has made in the past, right? You may be wondering, well, what is that? It's the progression is really nice, but it's not super like long form. And we're going to compare it to Dead by Daylight because they do all the stuff that you need for long-term longevity of a game correctly. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to compare the things, talk about what Dead by Daylight does right, does wrong, and then we're going to talk about what the other ASIMs all keep doing wrong. They keep making the same mistake, even though some of the games are fantastically fun. It doesn't matter. They just shoot themselves in the foot. So, what is the big thing with Killer Klowns? And you're all going to disagree with this as soon as I say it, so give me a chance to explain. But it is the lack of a ranked ladder. Now, I know that sounds absurd. This is clearly just like kind of a meme game, and it's really just meant to be played for fun. Even though there is, a fair amount of skill expression in the game, honestly. But it was kind of like Ghostbusters, which Ilphonic also did. These are all kind of supposed to be like casual games, right? And so what does a ranked ladder really have to do with anything? Well, I will say that like Ghostbusters and Texas Chainsaw Massacre both could get pretty competitive. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, way, way competitive. That game is not casual in the least, even though it's being sold as casual. But Killer Klowns, though, you can actually see that this one definitely has more of a casual mindset to it. And it's designed to be casual kind of from the start and is successfully casual. In other words, you play it and it feels like it's a casual game. But casual games don't last. That's kind of my point, right? The thing that Dead by Daylight does is that they have a ranked mode, but it is an ignorable ranked mode. You can just play Dead by Daylight casually, but the fact that the game does have some semblance of MMR in it, some matchmaker rating to go with the ladder, means that casual players get a more casual experience, and it's not until you start getting better and start trying to push the limits that you really start running into other players that are going hard as much as you are. Of course, unless, there aren't enough people in the queue of equal skill, then sometimes, you get somebody else, but that's rare. When there's no MMR, you constantly get mismatched, and everybody gets run over, usually within the first 30 seconds, and you just keep re-queuing and re-queuing in the hopes that maybe you'll pull one of those rare fun games. As far as I can tell, there's no MMR. There's not been any talk about MMR. Now, if there was MMR in the game, I wouldn't be able to tell passively because the player base isn't big enough, and an MMR system usually needs a week or two to seed itself. It needs information to tell, like it needs your statistics and all this stuff to tell like how good you actually are, or at least as good as you are with the measurements that the game's taking, right? So what's going to happen is casual players are basically just going to get destroyed over and over once people learn how to play the game. New players are going to get just destroyed over and over because they're going to walk in and they're going to go against players that know what they're doing because there's no MMR, and they're just going to get destroyed over and over and over again. This sort of thing kills games. Kills them right out the gate because it makes the game automatically not new player friendly. It kills long-term play because without a ranked ladder, you don't really have any weight. There is a subconscious psychological value that by human nature, you will get more endorphins from overcoming a challenge in which you struggle. And the only way you get that out of a video game is if the matches seemed like you were on footing and you got to struggle against the other person. And then, or situation or whatever, and when you do get that chance to overcome it, rather it be in a casual perspective where you're like, oh, I suck at this game, I'm just a casual, but like you do like one little thing and you jump out a window or do something and it gives you just enough time to get to an escape and you're like, oh my god, it feels great. Like that's a big adrenaline hit. I've seen people, casual players, get excited because part of the hype there is it's like, oh my god, I'm not very good at this game, but I still managed to outplay this person and get out. Like, that's exciting for a casual player when that happens. And it's fun, to feel like you had a fair chance to actually win, too. Because there's nothing fun, no matter how casual you are. Nobody queues up to a game so that they can get murdered in the first 30 seconds of every round. It doesn't matter what game you're playing, right? So MMR is super important, and a ranked system to give weight and value to a game so that you feel like you have a reason to queue up for the next round. You're working towards something. It's your own personal skill trying to do better, even if the ladder's not very good. Dead by Daylight has a pretty janky ladder, honestly. I don't think anybody respects that ladder a ton, but it adds weight and value to the game, whether you want to admit it or not. Subconsciously, your games have weight, right? And you are always working towards something. And let's talk about what Dead by Daylight does right. So the thing that Dead by Daylight really does is, like, right when they launched, they had short form progression, long form progression, repeatable progression, and they had a ranked ladder system as well that worked as their MMR until they got actual MMR, but it still worked. And so all those things add a lot of weight and meaning and things that can provide, that little bit of an endorphin hit. You constantly feel like you're maybe working towards something or improving, because you're going to be struggling against people of your own skill level. And as long as the balance is in the same ballpark, you can kind of like see and try and eke out, that bit of perfection. It gives content creators something to show off because they can show their rank, where they are. They're going against other players that are, also skilled, so the stuff they're pulling off is more meaningful. That makes the content more interesting to watch. But let's talk about their short form progression. So in Dead by Daylight, they do have short form progression. Currently, it's when you get to certain prestige levels, you'll unlock a bloody cosmetic, right? And that's kind of some good short-term progression. They've got mid-term progression where you have to like unlock the perks, but there's a lot of perks and they make it really grindy to unlock them. And then you've got the repeatable progression where you have add-ons for either toolboxes or your power if you're a killer that are consumed at the end of the match. And so you want to continue to like grind blood points to stockpile up on those things. But even those are tiered because you have the iridescent quality stuff that's a little bit better, or supposed to be. And then that's even more rare. So like you'll always feel like spending your blood points will get you something valuable. Even once you've unlocked everything and farmed everything, you're still just like, well, I'm going to try and get more of these like really rare things that I barely have any of. So like that's really the secret sauce of Dead by Daylight, and they only need one really fun, engaging game mechanic or gameplay loop for all of those mechanics to give weight to, and that's the chase. Dead by Daylight has a really good chase sequence. The generators are kind of garbage. Hooks are really interesting because they're nice and iconic and have a lot of visual appeal to it. But mechanically, the way they work out is not great. Because players often end up in a tunnel cycle where they get hooked, and they get off the hook, and they end up right back on the hook. And a lot of times it feels like there's not a lot you can do about it, but that's because the hook system is just designed poorly. Um, in a long time, I think Dead by Daylight struggled with, its animations looked janky. The game was horrifically buggy at launch. But they sorted all that out. But they sorted all that out because they were able to keep their player base around. And content creators had stuff that they could constantly engage with and make content on. And things like VHS or Ghostbusters or Friday the 13th, last year, so on and so forth. A lot of these games, content creators just ran out of stuff to make content on. Last year and VHS, both are a good example. No ranked ladder, nothing to work toward. And so you were basically just trying to dumpster new players, or you were just playing against the same players over and over again once everybody left, right? And so it just kind of seemed like queuing up for the next match is like, all right, I'm going to beat up some more new players again, or I'm going to play these people that I've played before again. Or it just feels like you're just doing the same thing and you're just doing it again. And so you would have to play a lot to get a really good match, right? To have something to even show off, which really killed the game for streamers, right? And then you throw in, like, VHS also had some problems about how, like, boring the monster was, of course. Which was the nail in the coffin for that game before it even got off the ground. But assuming that the monster had been more interesting to play, they still would have needed something like a ranked ladder. And having a ranked ladder would have at least made Monster a little bit more interesting, because you would have at least been engaging with something. They gave Monster nothing to engage with except for a very short form progression system. And that's what I'm seeing in Killer Klowns. Killer Klowns has a lot of unlocks. Really cool stuff. As you can see here, I'm playing around right now. This is from stream, all this footage. And while it is cool, like, this will all get unlocked and farmed through within the first month by, most content creators and most players, honestly. And then so what after that? You're just queuing up randomly to shoot fish in a barrel, man. That's not fun to watch or do day after day. So people are going to get bored and they're going to leave the game. And once, the majority of your content creators leave, and the majority of your players will leave with them, but also for the same reason, because the players are also getting bored. The only people that are going to be interested in sticking around are, like, bully squads who do get a kick out of, like, trying to dumpster new players and shooting fish in a barrel. But as those dwindle, all you're going to be left with are bully squads fighting bully squads. Some will enjoy that, because they kind of like the high-tier challenge. Others won't, so then they'll quit playing as well. And then the game just gets down to this tiny niche pool of players that will seemingly stay around forever, but at that point the game will be dead, because the player base will be too small and too elite to ever get new players to come back and check this stuff out. So, like, that's the path that Killer Klowns has set itself on at this point in time. So the thing that I would suggest, not adding perks, adding perks arbitrarily that don't really fit the scope of the game don't work well. And TCM is a great example of that. I love that they have perks, because it gives you a way to customize your character, because that game severely lacked good customization. But their perks weren't really well thought out, and they were a lot of just kind of like, oh, what if we just do, like, +1 speed to this, and that was pretty much it. So you were really just sorting through which one was just mathematically superior, which was your mathematically superior perk. And that stuff is hard to balance, too. So the perks don't really serve Texas Chainsaw Massacre as well as they could. Now, Killer Klowns is way better on that front. They've got things set up as classes. The classes are locked in. It's just, for now, because there's no other abilities as far as I can tell. And there won't be any of those added. So, for example, on a clown, you could take a tracker clown, but then not take any of the tracking tools, and thus just be relying on the fact that you had a high sense stat, which lets you kind of hear noise, and then, I don't know, take some like big damagey stuff or something. Like, you can really like just set up your own class, and it's rooted in the foundation of whatever stat line you want to pick out, which will be defined by a class, but like that's all. Like, class is just a framework in this game. And then you just plug in like a couple of things, and there you go. You've had a customized class, but it's very lightweight, and it's very much just revolves around the items. So all they have to really do are just balance the items and watch out for like min-max trends, where it's like, oh, take these items on this particular class, and then like everybody's doing it because it outshines all the other options. Then they just have to tweak that, which could be a tweaking of the baseline, or it could be a tweaking of the weapon. And then boom, like you're kind of back in balance. So they don't have any worries about getting catastrophically out of control in this one because they've got fewer moving parts and pieces. Plus, you've got a lot of cosmetic customization in Killer Klowns, and I think that's really going to stand out. Like it's better than Friday the 13th even had, honestly. So there's a lot of really like fun and engaging stuff, but without that matchmaking, without that ladder, and without some kind of meaningful, repeatable grind, like it's missing both of those. It needs at least one of those, honestly. And a weekly challenge is not repeatable grind, because a weekly challenge is just typically XP or something frivolous that doesn't mean anything once you're maxed out. Once you have everything unlocked and you're max level, a weekly challenge doesn't give you anything unless they want to make that a way to like get cosmetics. But that would be weird. You'd want to do a battle pass or an event instead, which is a direction they could go. They could just do constant events that are done in battle pass format, where you have a bunch of trivial cosmetics to unlock. Hunt Showdown utilizes that to great success. Great success. Again, it's repeatable, meaningful progression that has some weight to it. Like, you need something that adds weight so that you get that subconscious human psychological endorphin kick when you get something that you feel is valuable. And so far, Killer Klowns has nothing like that. And so they're gonna fall victim to the same thing every other asymmetrical horror has fallen to. And that's where people love it for about the first month. Then they lose about 70% of their player base because everybody's done everything. They've played everything the game has to offer. And so they get bored and they go back to other games that do have those things. So like Dead by Daylight, for example. Now, if on launch they're like, ranked mode, ta-da, that would be great. Or if not ranked mode, if they announced, we have events coming with, a battle pass style event or something like that, all of that would be like great. That would have some value. That would mean something. But I've heard no talk about any of those things yet. And there's no MR as far as I can tell, and that's a mistake. Because people are going to play this game very seriously. They always do. There's no PvP game that people just don't take seriously. Dude, people get sweaty in Fall Guys. And that is it's not even real PvP, man. It's just a goofy obstacle course race with goofy ragdoll mechanics, and people get sweaty in that. Among Us, dude, people get sweaty in Among Us. Like, there is no PvP game where a part of the community isn't going to just get competitive, because it's PvP, it's verse. It's the nature of the beast, man. Like I think developers are guilty, and maybe this is coming from some of the design courses that they take. I've taken some design courses myself at UAT. I went there for a little bit, but I didn't get far enough into the programs because I was also working 12 hours a day and doing some other things, so I wasn't able to stick with it. But I did get to see some of the design stuff, but not enough to know what maybe some other developers have gotten into. But I have heard developers talk about stuff. And these things have been reoccurring. One of the things I hear developers say is, well, we don't need this gimmick as long as our game is just fun. Like, people will play our game as long as it's fun. And that's very true for the first week, sweetheart, but that's not how human beings function psychologically. Because it doesn't matter how fun something is. Once you've done everything fun there is to do in a fun game, then you get what is called bored, and you move on. This whole ideology that developers get, that as long as my game is fun, that's all I have to do, right? I mean, that's all you have to do if you just want to sell copies and then, and then move on to your next game and abandon it, right? Like, that's a great mentality for single-player content. And the great thing about single-player content is that that's more mod-friendly. So you can let your modder communities come in and they add new content to stuff, and that's always interesting. I mean, look at Minecraft. If you're a developer and you have been told that things like ladders and progression are just sort of like gimmicks, and that your real focus, or the only thing you have to worry about is making your game fun, and you shouldn't worry about the cheap gimmicks, and you've really just been taught wrong, right? Like, there's nothing cheap or gimmicky about good progression. That's part of the value of the game. And what you should really be looking at, like how you should be looking at game design, is you want something fun. And then you want good mechanics or gimmicks, if you feel more comfortable calling them that, that add weight and value to that fun. It's sort of like a force multiplier, if you want to look at it that way. So the more fun your game is, then the more your progression systems and your ranked modes or your season pass events or whatever it is you're doing can then amp up that fun quality, can add more weight to something that's already like significant. So on the flip side, if your game is like no fun at all, then those force multipliers are basically just multiplying a zero. Doesn't matter what you multiply, you're still going to end up with nothing. So your game does need to be fun, and Dead by Daylight's a great example. The generators aren't fun, the hook mechanics are mediocre, the balance is, questionable at times, but damn it, that chase sequence is a lot of fun. I think, both Killer and Survivor enjoy it. There's a lot of customization, which is really important as well, because people like to feel like they're playing the game and they're not just walking through the steps that somebody else has already laid out for them. Because that's part of the fun. Originality and uniqueness is part of the fun. So yeah, Dead by Daylight has one really good fun facet to it, and that's all they needed. Killer Klowns has way more fun, but so far, no multipliers, no longevity, nothing to add like weight or anything that's going to keep players like really hooked into. Anyway, this was a pretty long rant here, but normally I try and edit and cut this stuff down, but I've noticed that then I don't communicate things as well. Like, I'm having to redo my deep dive video on Dredge because I just cut too much out and I didn't explain enough. So here you go, the full explanation, pretty much like unfiltered and just me ranting on and on about all this stuff. But it's all important, this matters. So hopefully we see something that gives this game some longevity, because it's really fun. I really enjoyed Killer Klowns, and I'm going to play the crap out of it because I don't expect it to be around for long. But I expect it to be around long enough to get way more than my money's worth out of it. So I'm going to enjoy it while it's here, just like I did with Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think this game will probably have a longer shelf life than TCM, though. TCM was plagued with a lot of issues, on top of also having, missing any key gimmicks, right? So this game will do better than TCM, hands down. Yeah, hands down. But anyway, that's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.